Hi. Sorry, my room is a mess, but it's okay. It's Electric Emily here. Today, we'll be reading some, fan fictions. This video is just meant for laughs, not meant to be offensive, okay?
It.
Yeah. Alright, so today we'll be reading a Creepypasta fanfiction, I think? Alright, yeah, a Creepypasta fanfiction by Insane Asylum on Wattpad. Alright, this'll be good. I'm gonna read it exactly as written. No matter the grammar, no matter anything. Let's get started, shall we? The stars are out again. They seem to brighten the moonless night, thought a girl laying in a water. Reached her right arm out as if to pluck one of them out of the sky. She slowly arose out of the water as a light breeze blow. The only thing that could be heard is the rustling of the leaves. She stood in the center of the pool of the water. Soon she made her way to the edge of the pool. She looked at the woods that was around her. She put on a blue, strapless dress on to cover her exposed skin. As she took a few steps, she could feel twigs and dry dead leaves crackle under her bare feet. She made her way to a small town. As she looked back at the woods that seemed darker now, "Not much has changed while I was asleep," she thought to herself. She crossed the street and stood under a street light to look in a store window. "You have really beautiful hair," a man said, coming into the light. She just kept looking at the window. "You know, I've never seen anyone with blonde hair that shines like your before," the man went on. He got closer, then he began to stroke her hair. Okay. She slowly smiled, then she took a hold of his hand and began to pull him toward an alley. He was happy to follow her. "What is this, a maze?" he asked impatiently for to stop. "I don't want anyone to see, plus it will be worth it, I promise," she replied with a smile as she led him down one more alley before stopping and turned around to face him. He brought his hands up and got ready to kiss her. "Not yet. I still need to get ready, so give me 1 minute," she said, walking down an alley by herself. "Just stay here. This better be worth it," he said, leaning toward the entrance. "Trust me, you're never going to forget this night," she laughed. "At least tell me your name," he said, looking around. "Why does my name matter, Kevin?" There was a long pause before he asked, with horror in his voice. How did you know my name was Kevin?" There was no reply. Then he heard footsteps approaching. Kevin heard a low snarl. So he turned his head to see a man wearing a black trench coat that went down to his knees. He was also wearing black boots that went up to his knees, and a black fedora with a rose on the side. His fedora covered the top half of his face, so that all could be seen was his devilish smile. "Hey buddy, you should leave," Kevin warned, pulling a switchblade out. "We got a switchblade here." The man wearing the fedora just stood there without moving an inch. Kevin felt a sharp pain in his chest that caused him to drop the knife. He looked down to see the girl's hand had gone through his chest. He tried to yell for help, but the only thing that came up was blood. Kevin looked at her to see her brown eyes with the excitement of what she just did. Her face seemed sorry. She pulled out her hand and wiped it on her dress. Kevin fell to his knees before slumping over. She watched his eyes that was full of life slowly become dimmer till they were dull. She turned to see the man in the fedora smile at her. She turned and ran away. Who the hell would watch someone die right in front of them, she asked herself, as she turned and looked where she had just came from with her hands on her hips and began to breathe heavily. Ooh, hands on your hips, let's go. "Whoever he was is probably not even looking for me," she chuckled to herself, then shrugged before turning around. The last thing to turn was her head. So when she ran into something, she was swearing at it under her breath. She backed up to see what she ran into, only to see the fedora standing there. Oh wait, the man in the fedora. She'd throw a punch at him, but he just sidestepped, which threw her off. He just smiled at her and put his hands in his coat pockets. "Who the hell are you?" She seemed irritated that all his response was a snicker, so she went on. "Fine, have it your way." She put up her fist, and he just threw his head back, laughing. She began to throw punches at him, but all he did was sidestep and not one hit him. She threw a right hook, but it didn't make contact with him. He quickly moved closer to her and hit her in the stomach. But how did he hit me? His hands were in the jacket. It wasn't his knee. What the hell was it? she thought before dropping to her knees, holding her stomach. She looked up at him, but before could say anything, something was around her neck. By the way, you can call me Smexy, he howled before she passed out. He took his hands out of his coat pockets and bent down and picked her up. He tossed her over his shoulder and carried her to the woods. They soon came to a well, and he jumped down it. Going to a world where the sun never shined, the sky was red with black clouds, and where time felt like it stood still. He carried her till they come to an iron gate. He opened it and carried her till they reached the mansion that sat just beyond the gate. He opened the door and no one was there, so he kept going. He was soon down in the basement. He tossed her on the bed as he thought what to do with her. Well, I can't have you attacking me again, can we? He started to himself. He looked around to see shackles on the wall, a smile grow on his face when he seen them. He dragged her over to them and put them on her. They kept her hands above her head as she sat on the floor. He kept looking at her for a few minutes before reaching out and to remove some hair from in front of her face. Smexy, are you here? Brother, I need to talk to you. Someone upstairs yelled out, making his hand jump back to his side. He got up and walked over to the door before turning back to look at her. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back, he said with a devilish smile and a light snicker. Her eyes half opened, but everything was too blurry to make out what it was. Her head began to gradually go up, but she tried to stay awake for as long as possible. But she gave in and fell into a deep sleep. Something touched her cheek, causing her head to jolt up to see that devilish smile. But now she could take a better look at him. He had white with a tint of blue, but only if you stared too long to see it had blue, and razor-sharp teeth. I'm glad you are finally awake. I was starting to get bored waiting, he said, taking off his fedora, and what she seen startled her at first. He had no facial features except for that devilish smile of his. What, does my face bother you? He asked, moving his face to hers. No, but you being so close to me bothers me. Her face got a little red, so she looked away. He stuck out his purple tongue, that seemed to be the normal width of a human tongue, but the length was nothing to laugh at, 'cause it seemed like it could go on forever. He used his tongue to push her face to make them face each other, before pulling it back in his mouth. She was little curious to know how far it could stretch. Her face got redder from him touching her face with his tongue. He noticed that her face was getting red. What's wrong? He moved closer to her face. Nah, nothing's wrong. She looked away from her eyes. He leaned toward her, putting his forehead on hers. He brought up his hands that were abnormal large to hold her head still. Then why don't you look at me? She made her eyes meet his and said, it's just, she couldn't finish what she was saying 'cause he kissed her. I'm done. I'm done. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more of these videos in the future, hit that subscribe button and that like button. And I'll leave the fanfiction down in the description, just in case you want to indulge in it in the second part. This is Electric Emily, signing out.